Josh, I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I like to keep electronic notes, so you may see me looking down at my screen a smidge here. But I wanted to start today with a couple of things, and I wanted to first give you all a wholeheartedly warm welcome to Vegas. It's hard not to feel warm and befriended immediately here. When we were standing around last night at the slot machines, we were befriended very frequently. So we said no every single time. It was a consistent answer, but we did engage and found out some good stories. So for all of you who traveled prepared and are presenting at this event, I really appreciate your time and your significant investment in this. Hopefully you can couple this with a little downtime. So I got to tell you a little story about me being asked to present as a Keynote this year. And I would much rather be out here, so if you see me moving around, it's just because I don't like being behind the podium, but my notes are here, so things are okay. So first, in all honesty, I had to go out to Google, right? Hey, what is a keynote speaker? And so I did that, and then Google asked me in the search results, gave me the answer to my question, and it's got 4 more possible questions there for me, and says, what makes a good keynote speaker? I'm like, well, I better click on that one too. That sounds like that's important. So of course I took advantage of this AI, right? Very simple AI. I asked a simple question. It gave me the next question that I should have been asking, right? I didn't even have to think about it. Google knew better than me, right? So simple, they've got it down. I clicked through it, loved it. It was really good. It gave me the answer to a question I might not have asked, but Google thought I should. So many parallels to that in healthcare. If you think about a patient coming in and putting in their symptoms into a chat box, right, where it's just going through, hey, I've got chest pain, but no, it's not radiating. No, my arms don't hurt. Yes, it's on, when I press on my chest, automatically it goes through an algorithm and says, okay, looks like it could be cardiac, but no, you press on it, it hurts. Non-cardiac goes down a different path, right? This all exists today, and a lot of facilities already have this technology. It's just a simple use, but that I would say is AI, right? It gets you the symptom checker, and then it says, hey doc, this is a priority 1, right? For your HMO patient, you need to get after this now. Or it's priority 3, it could wait till next week or whenever the patient next comes in to see the physician or when they're doing a telehealth visit. So that type of prioritization cuts down the amount of time that provider needs to see that patient. Why? They've already done the basic questions for him, and the doc knows exactly what he's going to go and treat, right? Because IBM Watson and all these other bots all have calculated what the percentages are for this to be cardiac chest pain, atypical chest pain, an injury, and it comes out with percentages and just tells the provider right then and there. It's been out for years. So they're just refining the tool set and adding more data, right? As we get into this, the central theme that we're really going to talk about at this conference, if I had to sum it up in one word, is those 4 letters. And it sounds so, obtuse and innocent, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So specifically, if you note the degree of precision accuracy that's required today to get paid, think about all the stops, right? I got to get the insurance information, the demographics right when I'm doing the pre-reg. Then I got to go in and I got to make sure that at time of service, I collect the copay. What if it's a telehealth encounter? I got to move that process up front, right? So that when I'm scheduling the telehealth encounter, also collecting the copay. You go through billing, coding, rev integrity, charging, collections, and then we finally get to the point where, hey, maybe the insurance company will pay us the right amount that we expect. And that's where that precision need comes from. And so much of that is supported by the revenue integrity function in your facility and other facilities, and by having, and I'm not married to Parathon, I don't have any investment in Parathon, but you need a tool. You have to have a vendor, you have to have a partner, you have to have a tool, and I'll go into some of the reasons for that. I was always the guy that, hey, we can do it better in-house, until about 2012. And then things changed because I met some really, really good vendors that did it 10 times better than I ever could. I can't hire people to do what a team of 50 that they have can do when I've got 2 or 3. So think about, more policies, they're coming forward, more edits. I'm not going to get into all the detail, but think of it this way, they're more precision edits. We had MUEs and CCIs and NCCIs, and we had, kind of just the smattering of things. look at all the different payers that have come out with their own edits, right? You send a level 3 ED bill to United now, they recode it, right? How do you know how they're going to pay it? I don't know how they're going to pay it. I mean, it's not going up, I'll just tell you that, right? Because they did their sample and they told you it's not going up. We didn't find anything that went up, or we found one, but we found a lot that went down, right? So they're down coding to 2s and 1s. Not just that, but if it's not life-threatening, they're again holding the provider liable for that charge when that patient shows up at your ED and EMTALA says you got to treat them, right? You got to get them to stabilized care so that you can figure out what to do with them next. If they can be seen outpatient, go to another hospital, be admitted, whatever the situation might be. So Medicare now allows patients to shop. So you can go to Medicare's website. It's really nice if you go on the consumer side of Medicare portal, which you may or may not do. You can go on Medicare's website and you can see exactly what your reimbursement's going to be for your AM surge procedure or your hip or your knee at your hospital. And then you can go look at the surgery center down the street, as long as they participate in Medicare. And you can look at the two prices. Patients know. It's really easy. I mean, it's probably take you a minute to come up with a calculator, put in your zip code, or if you know the provider's name, put in the provider's names you want, and the patient's got that information real time. Now, granted, Medicare's data is not immediately current. Some of it's aged, and I don't know how far back they go, but it's newer than the MedPAR data because they're taking actual claims and they're populating their system so that it is much more current than what we can get from MedPAR. So recognize that data is the future of where we're going. And unless we are able to control it, harness it, and make it work for us, none of us will be here. We won't. We'll all be one big system, or we'll have nationalized health care, or we won't have the jobs that we have now because somebody else will come in behind us and do it better, faster, cheaper, or more efficiently. So transparency's here, and I'm not going to talk a ton about transparency. I think we've got others that will probably cover that in the agenda. But keep in mind that the only way you get transparency is through data accuracy and integrity, and you're going to hear a lot more of that today. My hope is that you'll take a few notes as we go through this and go back to your facility and just implement something you learned about from this conference. Maybe something I talk about, might be something that Katie talks about in a little bit. First, I have to say, before I get into some of the meat and potatoes of today's session, special thank you to the team from Parathon that made this happen and goes above and beyond to be available. I've reached out to some of the Parathon folks on weekends. They take my calls. I don't know why, but they do. I can't say that for my staff at the hospital, but I can thank them. So Jacqueline, Hannah, and I know there's many others who've been involved in that, but thank you so much for what you did to get us all here today. Second, before we kick off the session here, I've got to recognize somebody in the audience who's I would consider a very special person, and his wife. I want to tell you how I first met Jim. So about 15 years ago, I got a call. It might have been from Jim or one of the sales guy at the time, right? And he says, I got this thing and we do this. And I said, okay, well, yeah, sounds good. I've never seen that, so let's see it. We've got all these issues with managed care and contractual analysis and getting the right dollars and going after underpays. No change, right? It's 15 years later, no change. But Jim had a tool, and the tool was great. I look at this thing, and every question, and I peppered the snot out of him because 15 years ago I didn't like vendors. So I asked him every question. Yeah, of course we can do that. Yeah, we do that for these clients. Yeah, here's how we do it. It was like, I walked out of there, I was like, oh my gosh. I don't know. One, I wanted to go work there. That's what I wanted to do. And two, I was like, this is really exciting. How could we not get this done and not invest in the tool? So at the time, we did not. And the pushback was from the CFO and the CEO, who didn't really understand the concept, didn't know how much money was out there, and didn't have any time to get this done. So today I'm going to go over a little bit about how you can get that through your C-suite to make sure that these things get approved. So no fanfare from Jim, no flashy stuff. I mean, he came in the, just I think a collared shirt. That was all I can say, and it was very casual, and it left me very impressed. So Jim, I thank you for that and for teaching me a lot of the things that I learned over the last 15 years. So I know it was a long commute for you and Katie. Thank you for making that. As I hope everybody's met Jim and Katie. So it's great to have you in the audience. let's get started. So what can you expect from today's presentation? I apologize that I'll go much more quickly here and try to get you done in an hour. The presentation will be a bit interactive, as I really enjoy leveraging the collective wisdom in a group such as this. So feel free to put your hand up, blurt it out, just try to keep it short, and I will try to do the same in return, just so that we can get through that. Please feel free to ask anything, add any commentary, ask questions as we go through this, and I may ask you for some of your insight as we go through the slides. We could go to the next one. So secrets to revenue optimization, why revenue integrity is so important. I think you're going to find that if this isn't already front and center and you're talking about it every day in your organization, you will. Its time is overdue. The amount of incremental revenue that's on the plate and compliance risk that this function covers can't be understated. And we'll talk a little bit about more about what that is in just a minute. We go to the next slide. So who am I and what do I do? I started as a nurse. I worked in clinical settings for about 5 years. Worked for insurance companies on the devil's side. I still would say that. And then I left there, went back to healthcare, and ended up getting a degree in finance and a master's, and have really been in rev cycle leadership roles for a long time. Doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it has. And then my specialty and what I and my partner Tony's in the room here somewhere. I think he's a little green this morning. He might have stayed out later than was expected, but we work together quite often. Oh, there he is. We could go to the next slide. So here's our agenda for today and some of the things that we're going to cover. So we'll go through really the rationale for it and some of the introductions. I always like to level set, especially with some of the Keynote activities. I want to leave you with more than just information and data. I want to leave you with more of a purpose. So the link's in the presentation and you'll have access to it. It should come across in the PDF. I picked the shortest site where I could find this video, but you'll find it online. And just as an overview, it's from Cleveland Clinic, and a lot of you have probably seen it. It's got some great music behind it. It really sets the stage for why we're all here. And it talks about who are the clinicians in today's world and why do they matter and what they do and how it matters. They focus on housekeepers and cleaners, and they show you some really good insights into what patients are actually feeling when they're walking through that door. They're really not thinking about, you and what you need. They're really just truly centric on their health issue and getting that resolved. Scared, apprehensive, just got a diagnosis that's could be traumatic or terminal, and how they cope with those things. So it's worth the 5-minute investment, and I would say for your teams, if they haven't seen it, it really does help to connect the finance side to the clinical side. So we're going to start at the second bullet here. If you were going to start work at your organization tomorrow, and if tomorrow was your first day, right? Maybe that's Monday, and your CEO asked you that question, what would the answer be? What would the answer to that question be? So you know your organizations. You've got a lot of inside knowledge. If tomorrow was your first day, you come with all this knowledge, what's the first thing you would do? Would you do what you normally would go back Monday and do, or would you do something different? I think we'd all do something different, right? Knowing that Monday is my first start date, my CEO has just asked me this question, and I got to give him an answer. It's not going to be, hey, I logged into my email, I'm at work, I'm getting through voicemails if I have any, and then I'm, responding, right, to all the weeds that have grown over the weekend that I have to now pluck in my garden, right? So the garden of the mind gets cloudy and clogged pretty easily with weeds. But if all of us took this approach and we treated every day as our first day, how many better decisions would we make? How much better would we serve the organizations? And how much better would we feel when we go home and we know that we've really moved the dial and the envelope for our organization to be sustainable in the future? So I encourage you just to use this and take it back to your teams and ask them the same question. What if we treated every day as your first day? Going into work tomorrow, it's a new place. What am I going to do? What's my top priority? It's not going to be checking email. I'll just tell you that, right? You'll get to those ones on fire, but nowadays there's so much technology that you can leverage in terms of prioritization. I want my CEO's emails to come through in red, right? High priority. Okay, great. I scan for red. That's easy, right? Somebody sends me a daily email that I don't even have to look at, that gets auto-filtered, right? Use those tools so that you're focused on the things that really count and matter. But keep in mind, what you plant in your mind is what grows. So if you're planting weeds, that's what you'll have. You'll be fighting fires the entire time, every day, all day. If you're thinking strategically, you're going to move up in your organization, and your organization will be around to see the future. We can go to the next slide. So some of the purpose and the goals, you all know a little bit about the revenue cycle, and many here know much more than I could ever know. I think if I asked Terry, she's like a master of all, and never doesn't she ever not have an answer to my questions. I'm just going to cover the key purpose of a highly functioning RI department. So of course I go out and you can find probably 30 definitions today of what hospital RI is. So I just gave you a couple that were Google search indexed, right, that go to the top. So of course Google's already done the work for me to tell me which are the most popular definitions or sought out. And I want to make sure that we all understand that the word clinical is coming into these, this definition in this function more and more, as is compliance for obvious reasons. We all know all the compliance that we have to support today. I don't know if you know Jim Rohn, but he's a motivational speaker. He did a lot of work with Tony Robbins, and actually I think he taught Tony Robbins a lot of the stuff that Tony took, and Tony's further developed it. But you know, I think we have that choice to make every time we walk into a room, right? Keep in mind, you've got a lot of weeds growing when you walk into that next meeting at 1 p.m. where you're thinking about, geez, I still got to catch up from the last 3 meetings, and I got to prep for the next one, right? So keep in mind, be in the moment. Make sure that you choose this, and your face tells the story. Everybody's looking at your face because you're a leader, and they know, right? Pat's in a good mood today. Pat's not in a good mood today. And they're judging that just by how I enter the room. I go right down to my computer, I get right on it. Pat's busy, right? Pat doesn't want to be bugged. So keep in mind that you're sending those messages about what's important in your organization. Next slide. So why would we do revenue integrity? A pretty popular example would be, hey, we got this new thing called pricing transparency, and we need to defend our prices, and everything's on the web now, and we got this great website, and Parathon's helped me put my charge master online and make sure that I've got my shoppable services there and pings up against my managed care contracts. Is everybody in the room compliant with pricing regulations and transparency? Because only about 40% of the hospitals, when I go out there to look, I can actually get there and see the tool and use it. So 60% aren't compliant. I can't see 60% of the hospital's data. I want to go out and see the shoppable services. Yeah, they got a list. But I want to know I got Aetna and I got a high deductible. What's it going to cost me based on their charges and my contract rate? I don't know what that is. That's what I want. Can't get it. I encourage you to go out and look at your competitors and your peers in your markets. It's shameful, right? This rule's been in place and it's law. And there's a penalty for not meeting it. And we're really asleep at the wheel with not getting this done. Some of them are the biggest systems in the country that don't have this out. And they say, I'm going to eat the penalty. Well, that's not really a solution. It's a problem, but you have to disclose this information. So a simple way for pricing defensibility is, one, tap a vendor. I don't know that anybody can do this inside and do it consistently and accurately. Load the contracts, ping the shoppable services, keep your CDM up to date, and make sure that that patient can get the information that they need in real time and accurately on the web. At Ventura, we got a call from the Wall Street Journal, and hey, doing a story on hospital pricing, just checking in, right? Call me back. We'd love a copy of your charge master if you can send that to us. Here's our website. Help yourself. So we sent to our website, had all the information on pricing transparency and what was required. 3 months later, I've heard nothing, right? But they're doing a story. So the story will come out. Hopefully we'll be in good light. But we didn't have any interaction. We could just direct them to the website because we were in compliance with the rule. So I encourage you to look for one that fits your organization. So make sure that you've got a vendor evaluation matrix. If anybody doesn't, ask me. I'm happy to give you mine. It's got a lot of questions, and the vendor fills it out. You don't even have to touch it. So you get the vendor's statements in writing that show what they will do and how they'll do it to really critical questions to any vendor relationship. So a quick way, that what we consider our charges, what do they actually represent? Well, there's only a couple things, right? It's just we take our payer mix times the terms, we divide that by cost plus a little margin so that we can keep the doors open and continue to reinvest in our people, plant, and quality, and we come up with what our charge should be, right? So I gave you just a really simple, quick example. And keep in mind that even if your payers are 50% of your charge, if your cost is 49, you're still at a 2% margin, 2.04, which is really important because as margins get continually pressed and thin, every fraction on that margin drives a bond rating. And it's really important to a CFO, and it's really important to your future. So great, you might be killing it with cash, but if you just took over another hospital or you've done a lot of things on raising your prices, which don't really show revenue cycle efficiency, they're going to be on you for this. And I think there's going to be more and more accountability because margins are going only one way. Medicare is almost insolvent. Part A, I think, has 10 years left. B and D are funded by premiums, but A is automatic, right? Nobody pays for it. So there's only 10 years left. If you think that we're going to continue to get the A rates that we're getting today, not a chance. Not a chance. So this will become more and more stretched. I'm just going to cover really some of the higher points of a highly functioning Rev Integrity department and some of the things that will help you get this started or enhanced. If you don't have it, you could go to the next slide. So on the staffing and the structure side, the general rule of thumb is depending on where you're at, West Coast, East Coast, about 1 FTE per 200 million of net patient revenue. Now, does that work in an FQHC or a solo community hospital setting? Of course not. But you can never do this function with less than 2 people. And I only say that because when you're an RI, you need somebody to bounce things off of. You need somebody else's wisdom a lot of times to get through, hey, is this a compliance issue? Can I charge for these 2 things together? What do you know? Let's bounce our heads off together. Everybody's got different resources. So it really helps to have at least 2. The other is, you got 1, a single source, person leaves, goes on a vacation, gets sick, takes PTO, what happens? Function stops. Can't stop. This is not that function that can stop. This is like your greeter at the hospital. You need them. You don't like them sometimes, but you got to have them. And they're an expense. So you need coverage redundancy, and you need to build that knowledge capital with the rest of the team in the organization. So your RI team should be out educating the clinical side and interacting with the clinical side. That's why having somebody who has got a clinical background in your RI department, critical. It's only going to become more critical. If they don't speak clinical, if they're not a coder or a nurse or a LPN or some type of clinical person, very challenging in the future to go forward and convince a clinician to do different. Remember, RI is only going back to the clinician because something's wrong. It's not, hey, Dr. Smith, you're doing a great job. I love you. Keep doing that. No, you're coding 3s that should be 4s. You're missing diagnoses. We need those for HCCs and severity of illness, and we have to have them in the chart. You're not putting them down, right? So it really helps to have somebody who can speak clinical or at least relate to that provider. I will say I use it all the time only to my benefit. Yeah, I was a nurse. I understand. Immediately, there's a connection. It is so easy for me to go into a room, have that discussion with somebody who's clinical and have instant credibility as it would be for somebody who's not. It's not fair, but that's just how it is. I can tell you it's been that way for 20 years I've been in Rev Cycle. So take just one quick, easy example back with you. Trying to sell this pitch, I want to get another RI staffer, I want to start a department for RI. How do I get it started? Hey, look at your implants. Just pull all your implant CPTs and go down the list, all right? Hey, Joe, in purchasing, how many of these defibs or pacers did we buy? Or hips or knees, pick something. Okay, we bought 10 last month. Hey, how many do we have on encounters? Well, we got 9. That's all it takes. It's that simple. Don't go into the weeds trying to say, we're going to get a 10-to-1 ROI with my revenue integrity team. But look, if we just capture this one implant, all your managed care payers probably do pay you incrementally for that implant. Medicare often pays you for it. Even some of the Medi-Cal and Medicaid plans will pay for implants. It's free money, right? You put a RI person over chart audits, they're looking in a system like Parathon to see what the underpays are, working the underpays that matter, or those that look like they're missing charges, or you just say, hey, Parathon, give me a list of all charge-based payers for yesterday's date of service. I want the nurse to go and audit those records. It's that simple, right? That's all you got to do. I'm only looking at the charge-based payers where it's going to trigger an outlier, or it's going to trigger a stop loss, or it's a PCR, percent of charges. Every day, somebody in your organization should be working that report. It is gold. You'll find money there, I guarantee you. Even if you think you have no commercial business like we do in Ventura, it's highly governmental, there's still tons of opportunity for us. I can't even tell you how much. So we recently found 500 implants that had no HCPCS on them, no CPTs. How do you think those are getting paid? Yeah, they all rolled into the surgical bundle, and there was no separate payment, even though all our managed care companies contracts provide additional reimbursement for it. Medicare, not one. So it was easy to identify and get that fixed, but it's one of those things, they're out there. If you don't think they're out there, they really are. The easiest way to track and trend this is just use a simple Excel spreadsheet. Should have about 10 columns at the top. Things that matter to the person doing the audit and tracking the gains in RI. But until you start tracking the gains, and it can't be you, you're too busy, you've got other things, it's got to be the person finding it and fixing it. That's the person who should be tracking the RI wins. So we did this at a hospital I went to in Kentucky. It was losing a couple $1 million a month. They had already had Stock Camp come in, did a whole transformation, took $70 million in cost out of the organization each year, but still losing money, couldn't get traction. So I said to the CFO, I said, we really need a Rev Integrity department. This was back in 2014, 13. And he says, Pat, I can't afford it. Okay. I had been through it before with Jim, right? When Jim came in and said, I got this great tool, it's going to help you, Pat, you'll love it. I agreed with him. I couldn't get it done. How I got it done in Kentucky was, fine, okay, we want to play that way? All I'll do is, I'll do a self-audit, quick self-audit. We know where the hidden bodies are. Hey, patient accounts, where do you see lost charges, or what do you see we're missing where you got to dial up the clinical departments? That's your lead, right? Takes you about 2 minutes to figure that out. Hey, can we get somebody to run a report on these things, right? How many did we buy? How many did we charge for? Or we look at the remit advice, right? It's pretty easy nowadays. We get paid for it. No. Did we follow up on it? If no, look at why. Put it in this person's purview to do that front to back look at those encounters. Not to mention compliance and integrity and response to all this transparency stuff. But this person will pay for themselves. Our 3 nurses, I got them approved. I'll show you how in a second. I got them approved. They started within the first 30 days, they paid for themselves. By 90 days, we were already 3x. So in 90 days, they brought back 3 times their annual salary. Of course, those people went nowhere. They were some of the last to leave the organization because they were considered that important. I'd drop a biller or a collector before I drop one of those folks. So it was a real win for the organization, and that was just the start. They knew where to go and what to get after, and it was very easy to get them trained because they're clinical and they're looking at records. It was the CPTs and the HCPCS that was a little more challenging for them. Can we go to the next slide? So getting started, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but here's some of the ways that you can get started. If you just said, hey, within Rev Integrity, I want to just look at coding, right? Because it's a mystery to a lot of folks. And there's a million rules. If you think CCIs and OCEs are complicated, coding rules got to be 2 to 1. So if you looked at what am I seeing in coding, well, I got to work backwards. Where are my denials coming from? Where are my underpays coming from? Is it related to the coding function? If yes, great, keep going through this pathway. But this is just one quick way that if you're looking to prove value and get positions approved, this will help you when you take this to your CFO or whoever your approver is. An example on the next slide is a coding audit template. So this is, it's all formula based and it's protected so nobody can keystroke, error, edit it. Happy to share it with the group. But all the coding audit does is goes behind a coder, How did you code it? How should it have been coded? Keep in mind on the ambulatory side, who codes the encounters? The provider, right? The provider says why that patient was here, picks the diagnosis off the shelf, drops it in the chart. So at another hospital, use this for the entire provider group. If you were a new provider, 100% for 30 days. We just audited all your encounters. We just want to see what you're doing, how you're documenting. Get after a bad practice quickly. That's why we did 100%. After that, if you were 90%, 90th percentile or above, you got 9 out of 10 of these right, and we didn't have any coding changes or diagnosis adds or deletes, we'll see you annually, right? It was easy. Docs really like this. Once they got past, you're looking at my stuff, right? I don't like anybody looking at my stuff, right? Why would you call me imperfect, right? When I only bring you back those things that need to be changed. But when you phrase it where it's all color coded, so if they're below 90, it's a different color. If they're above 90, it's green. All docs like to see themselves as green, right? Ultra competitive. All providers are pretty competitive when it comes to this. If you'd like this, I'm happy to share it. Get it. I'll get it over to our hosts, and we'll put it on the thing. Easy to do. It's quick and simple. All you need is a coder to fill it out and give them the records that you want to take a look at for your problem providers. We did this on a provider that was billing everything as a level 5. Does anybody see an issue there? He had been coached about 50 times in the past 10 years, okay? Never changed. Why didn't he change? Me, I'm saying, get out there. We got to meet with this guy. I'll go meet with him. I mean, just set up the meeting. Let's go. We got to fix this. There's not an option here. There's just not that theoretical probability that will ever fly. No, all my patients are 5s. I don't need to meet with you guys. Just you stay in your box and I'll stay in my sandbox. So I said to the CMO, I said, we got to meet with this guy. You got to set up some time. So CMO set up a meeting. We go through it. Oh my God, he had every reason under the sun why his patients were a level 5. Well, great. We have the documentation based on this audit. Here's what you're documenting. There's a mix of 3s, 4s, and 5s here. So here's the coding rules. That's really easy. He knew what they were. We knew what they were. Here's the copy. Here's your documentation. How long do you think it took him to change his behavior after he got through the shock of being imperfect? It was instant, right? We walked out of the room. Documentation changed. But getting him to that point was challenging, right? You had to be persistent, you had to try different strategies, and you really had to engage the physician to say, look, this isn't, I mean, I could have called the compliance line, just reported it there and handled it that way. That would have been punitive, right? This was collaborative. I'm going to show you where we're seeing an opportunity. And if they're all 5s, great. Document all 5s. His coding immediately changed. He averages about a 4.4 now. But the documentation is bulletproof. So that's all that matters. It doesn't matter where you fall on the spectrum and the bell curve. Your documentation supports the coding, you are golden. Auditors cannot dispute that, period. So it doesn't matter where you fall. Documentation's great, you're a winner. So RI helps you get there. Keep that in mind. So if you've got problem docs and you've got potential opportunities on the coding side, again, another great place to start. Super easy to do. Give it to one of your certified coders. Hey, I want you to evaluate your peer. Just pull 10 of her records or 10 of Dr. Smith's records. Show me what you find. That's all. Take her a couple hours. She'll get used to the template. You'll be amazed at what you find, I guarantee you. And for those who have an ACO or shared savings, you have to do this because you have to get all the diagnoses in once a year to get your HCCs and keep your reimbursement high. There's, for a normal $200 million organization, could be $250, it could be $2 million attached to capturing all the HCCs that show the severity of your patients. So huge opportunity here. Next slide. So, you know, a vendor, one of the challenges that we have with vendors is you can't be the be all, know all the time for all, right? And that was something that I really struggled with when I was setting up my vendor relationships recently. It hasn't been that long since I've been a vendor fan. And I don't believe everything should be outsourced. RI should not be outsourced. You need that function to be clinically driven, clinically led, and clinically interacting day to day. How are you going to get that with somebody who's in Mumbai or on the East Coast and my hospital's on the West Coast? It's just not going to happen. And you need some of that touch. Remember, we're dealing with clinicians that we need to change behaviors. That doesn't always work well on Zoom. It sure as heck doesn't work over the phone, right? We all know what percentage of message gets transmitted those ways. But it works great for empathetic individuals to be in person and having that discussion when the other modes of education don't work. So here's just some secrets to you setting this up. You want a dedicated unit. This isn't like my biller is a biller one day and a revenue integrity expert the next day. Skip it. You're just wasting time, and you're going to torpedo the unit, and it won't last. It won't be permanent. So clinical reporting, is it going to end up there? Talk to your CFO. Have that dialogue now. This is the position description. This is what they're going to do. I see them doing this. Chart audits. They're going to go back, educate, take care of my TPEs, my targeted probe and educates, create the education sessions, roll it out to the providers, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that stuff that in most organizations doesn't get done or gets done late today and really has to get done. Tell them you're going to get a 2 to 3% margin improvement if you don't have this function today. That's what you will see. There's almost no way around this, because unless you're really simple and really small and you can control all the moving parts and you got 5 docs on staff and they're all employed and you're in a bubble, great, right? Exception. But for most organizations, you'll be shocked and amazed when you start this function, you start doing the chart audits, start taking a look at the coding audit, you'll be shocked what you find. I guarantee you'll find the 2 to 3% there. And it'll go right back. It's, well, I didn't know it was there, documentation stored somewhere else, I didn't have access to it at the time I coded it, blah, blah, blah. You'll hear all the reasons why it didn't get done, but it at least starts the dialogue to a corrective, a better process. Make a habit of utilizing RARs. If anybody doesn't subscribe to Becker's hospital leadership, subscribe. All hyperlinks, they give you little snippets. It's real easy to look through. Takes you about a minute a day to look through and find something that you'd want to look at. Yesterday, Katie's hospital, Katie's one of our presenters today in the front row here, her hospital announced that they were acquiring another system in Chicago, right? That's where I heard it from. I heard it from Becker's. I mean, they're just on top of stuff like that. Free, easy sign up, takes about a minute. They don't hassle you with all kinds of stuff. You can uncheck all the stuff you don't want, but a great resource. The others, don't forget to go to the Medicare consumer portal and see what the patients see, because that is definitely changing, and they're starting through soft steerage to move those patients to the portal to say, pick the most cost-effective, high-quality provider, right? Star ratings are still out there. We all know that's not going away. I mean, there's some tweaking going on to it, but the patients are figuring out that, hey, if I go to hospital A or hospital B, I have less out of pocket, right? And we know Part B is just over $200 now, annual deductible. A lot of patients who have commercial insurance are going to be your shoppers. There's just no way. I do it in a second. I got a high deductible health plan. Every time I need to go, hey, what's the charge on that? And what's it going to be under my insurance? I just ask the questions. Used to not get those answers. Now I get those answers. So how long would it take for you to create a folder in your browser and just stick in revenue integrity and put 3 or 4 links in there so that you've got those readily available resources on your browser bar? Just says rev integrity, I have a coding question, I need to look at what the reimbursement is, I've got it linked to the OPPS APC Addendum E so I can figure out what the Medicare reimbursement is for procedures. It's really quick, but the problem is you got to Google it, and then you got to find out which is the right link, and then you got to get there. Save it once, put it in a folder, and you'd be golden. The other is not having 30 links when you go look at your favorites reduces that mental clutter, and we're really trying to cut down on that so that you can focus on growing vegetables in your garden and not just weeds. So a couple more secrets. We go to the next one. Other things that you'll find when you get this moving is you have to do charge audits. You have to look at what clinical service was provided, what did we end up passing to HIM, what went through the scrubber, and what actually got billed, and how did it get paid, right? That's the process for that charge audit to go through. No reason your revenue integrity staff can't do that function. They should be able to do it like a rock star, right? Coding piece is normally the only weak link. They know the clinical side and they can learn the billing side pretty easy. Oh, here's the rev code, okay. I know what the CPT code is, I can learn the coding side, and they get it pretty quickly because they're already versed in medical terminology. There's Cdm Rev Code Mapping. If you guys don't have a Cdm scrubber, I know Parathon has one where they take your Cdm and they scrub it through their filter. Invalid, inappropriate rev codes, second HCPCS code is missing, or second CPT is missing, or it's miscategorized. You might have an S code going out to Medicare payers, right? So it might have a 99 series code for all payers, but if it's for Medicare, it'll go out with a 99 series. If it's a S code, which Medicare doesn't pay for, it should never go to them, right? So we just looked at this week at our facility, and there's 60 of them. So we have 60 S codes being billed to all payers all the time. What do you think that's doing, right? Immediately stops at the scrubber. What do you think the biller does? Oh yeah, we see that all the time. We just delete the line. They take the charge out, okay? For all of our Medicare, it's half our business. What do you think that does to our cost reporting? Helps it or hurts it? Of course, right? I mean, worst case, you drop the rev code to a 250 and you just bundle it with the rest of the pharmacy items on the claim. At least the charge goes out and it gets recognized, reported. Every statistic, some of these are super high volume S codes. Every statistic is altered because we're not giving the system good data to pull reports on. Think about it, right? Medicare's half your business. You got 60 S codes not being reported. It adds up. That's something that Rev Integrity can help you get after. Self-administered drugs, the capture, the billing for those, and a big part of the role is education and just bridging that gap with more and more clinician-led organizations. Gets you ready for Lab PAMA on 1/1, and also takes you into compliance land and takes a lot of that headache off your plate to have somebody who can focus on it. Next slide. We're almost done, team. So you know what you want, right? And you think this would be good for your organization. You have some better knowledge capital. You have people that you can use for your resources, starting up a department or enhancing it. How do you get it? So what's an ELP and how's it going to benefit me? Next slide. So I had to go back in my notes, and I was with an organization that said, weekly, you guys are going to start presenting. I was a manager at the time. Weekly, you're going to start presenting in the huddles. Okay. Who wants to go first? Crickets, right? What are we going to present on? I want some more information before anybody volunteers. Just something that would be helpful to the group. I said, okay, I'll take the first one. So I went out and found this somewhere. This was ages ago. And I just thought, would this help me, right? So I dusted it off a few times since then. I dusted it off when I needed to get those 3 nurses in. And this is something that all of us can do. But if you're not practicing this, you're setting yourself up for the same old answers you've always received when you go ask for more money, more resources, more people. So you got to stick to the 7. And if you can make it fun for your CFO and get him to actually smile, what does he leave with, right? A better impression than, geez, Pat's just over here asking for a handout again, right? That should never be why you're going into the CFO's office to ask him to support this position or your HR leader. So script what you do, right? You should have your elevator pitch ready to go in a moment's notice. Hey, I'm Pat, nice to meet you. This is what I do for the organization. And here's the 3 top things that I'm working on. How's that conversation going to go after that, right? He's going to love you or she's going to love you, whoever you had that conversation with. It really does work. And you'll note that the time it takes to get your projects and your people approved are 1/10 of what you used to spend. Next. So go sell, right? You got to go sell, and this is sales. If anybody doesn't think it's sales, it is sales. When you want resources and there's only so much in the pot, and you want those that have an ROI behind them, like Rev and Tag, there's no reason you shouldn't get those. So keep it simple. Make that spreadsheet something that the CFO, the CEO, the quality folks, everybody in the organization should be seeing that what is Rev Integrity finding every month. If you're not doing it now, do it. It takes no time at all. The people you have in that role are already finding it. They're just not sharing that information with you in a structured format to prove the value and the worth for that position. So what could go wrong, right? Next slide. What could be some of the challenges, right? You just have a dysfunctional culture. All I have to say is I work in a county-run healthcare system. I think we're up there, dysfunctional culture. We've got that down. We know how to not play well together, and we know how to not get things done, and we know how to lose money. So we're really good at that. And how do you get around that? There's a couple things. So I was talking with a health system this week, and they're break even. They've always made between 2.5% and 5% margin. It's new to them. Yeah, we'll get after that, right? Kind of soft, never had the issue of having a layoff or having to outsource people. There's 5 people in the organization out of the entire senior team. I think there's 80 of them. 5 people pulling the ripcord saying, help, we're going down. There's no upside here. Cost trend is 6. Managed care is giving me 3. Might get 3 from Medicare. We're going down, right? Everybody's still spending like they did 5 years ago, you know, in the what were the good old days. We just didn't know it then. And he says, these 5 are very influential and very important. Who am I going to make my pitch to? I'm going to those 5, right? Guys, I need your help on this. I need you to drive this forward. It's got a positive ROI. I'll show you the hard numbers later, but I really need your support for it. So go to the ones that you know are going to help you support something like this. Don't go talk to the dead wood in the organization, right? We have it at ours. I wouldn't even go there. I'd invite the CFO. I'd invite these decision makers and try to get them on board with addressing their concerns, why they didn't want to get that done. Next. So a couple of things as we wrap up. One, I want you to approach revenue integrity with the energy and enthusiasm that's inside of you. For those of you who went out with me at the last event here, I'll show you that tonight. I'll have a real live example. And then please leave your work invigorated, knowing you've made the impossible possible by implementing lasting change. And a lot of us miss that because we don't take the time to give to others and educate others in our organization. But number 2 up there is really important, to give away your knowledge freely. The more you give away, the more you'll be respected. It's not that you're giving away value. You're not giving away your position. You're not giving away something that's not replaceable. Make today your first day at work. So any questions? I'll take any questions before I run. Give it back over to Josh. All right. I appreciate your participation today. Thanks, everybody.